tell me about checkers and chess.
Hi, Maria. This is great. This is one of my favorite concepts because I think that it's going to help people really see this game that's being played. And the end result would be to get out of the game, right? And so it's checkers versus chess. And we both know these games, and these games are played on the same board, right? And so a checkers board without any players on it looks exactly the same like a chess board. And so let's start with checkers. Okay, checkers are the game that we, the people, are playing, okay? And so so if you think of the game of checkers, it's Team A against Team B. And checkers, each player in a game of checkers has the same status to start out. They have the same amount of power, and they all have the same amount of status on the board. Nobody has more power than anybody else, and the whole goal is to get from one side to the other side, taking out as many of your opponents as you can. And there's not a lot of strategy in checkers. You can only move one square at a time, and you can only go in one direction, and your goal is to get to the other side. The games go very quickly, and it is A against B. And so I look at this checkers game as the system that we live in, pitting we the people against each other in many different ways. And the goal is to keep us focused on each other. So whether it be a sports, whether it be CNN versus Fox News, whether it be a one particular issue like abortion, the Second Amendment, free speech, whether it be here's a current one, vaccines, or wearing masks. You either wear a mask or you don't wear a mask. So if you see somebody with a mask, you're like, oh, look at that sheep. If you see somebody without a mask, you're like, that is a totally irresponsible person. They're trying to kill me, right? And they pit us against each other, and we're focused on each other. And what the people playing checkers don't see is that there's a chess game going on right on top of them. And the people playing chess know all about the checkers game. Let me tell you something, people. They don't give a shit about you because they're busy playing chess. And in this chess game, there's a lot of different players, and there's a lot of strategy to this chess game. So you've got the whole first row, which are pawns, totally dispensable creatures who are just there to protect the back row. Now let's think about who's in the back row of a chess game. Well, what do we got? We got the military. We've got the religion, and we've got the king and the queen and their hegemon, right? So if you think about the back row, those are the controllers of the back row. So I posit this. If you know someone's name, there is a good chance that they are not playing chess. And if they are playing chess, they're a pawn. They're a puppet. They are completely and totally not important in the game because the real people who play chess are in the back row. And we don't know those people. Well, I know some of them because I've been studying them for 15 years. I have made it my life's work to figure out the back row. I want to know who these players are. So when Epstein came up in the news a couple years ago before he died, and what if it's true and if it's not true. So, I already knew who that guy was. And I was just like, oh, look it. This guy is back in the news again. Let's look at what's going on this little St. James Island. I already knew about the island. I already knew about some of the people. There are a lot of those islands all around. And there are submarine entrances to these islands. These people are playing this game, and they're playing it right on top of us. and then they pit us against each other so we don't see what they're doing. Now, everybody in the back row of a chess game, they've got their own chessboard going on someplace else. And this is where you get into 4D and 5D chess, if you've ever heard that before. There are chess games, playing chess games, playing chess games. And all we know, if we know anybody's name in this whole game, all we know are the pawns. Okay? Unless you understand who Henry Kissinger and Zbigniew Brzezinski, and unless you know who some of these really big players are on the global scale. The Soros is his name is in the news all the time, but the Larry Summers. Unless you know who some of these people's names are, they're pawns, most likely. Now, here's the good news. Okay, the good news is that once you understand that there's a chess game going on, you have an option. And that option, my friend, is to get off that checkers board. Stop playing the checkers board. So what is checkers? Where checkers is fear, anxiety. It is pitting people against each other. It is arguing and fighting with your family and friends over stupid issues that really are not your issues. There's things that it's talking about the circle of influence and the circle of concern. There's a lot of things that we can be concerned about, but if you don't have influence over it, don't let it rule your life. Don't let it affect how you function in the world. So you can step off that checkers board. And here's what happens when you step off the checkers board. You are no longer emotionally attached to the news because you've chosen to get off of that game. And when you get off of the checkers board, then, my friends, you can start watching the chess game. And let me tell you, when you start watching this chess game, it's awesome. You start learning who the players are. Forget about the pawns. Nobody cares about the pawns, these puppets, these people whose names we know, who maybe you vote for now and again or don't vote for, But these people, they're pawns. A handful of them might actually have some control. But you have to follow the money. And you've got to figure out who has paid for these people's voice. Who has paid for their actions. Every single vote that happens in Congress or anywhere in the world was bought. And who is the money behind that? And once you get off that checkers board, you can start watching this chess game, you're not afraid anymore. You're not anxious anymore because you've removed your emotional attachment to it. Why would you react to something that happens that you have no ability to influence? Now you can watch it and you can see that headline and you can take that headline that you see in the news and you could be like, is this a checkers or a chess article? Is this article designed to make me angry at one of my neighbors, or is it actual intelligence that's going to allow me to watch this chess game with more knowledge? And so you can choose to not react to these headlines. You can choose to not react to this crap that's happening in the world right now. And you can choose instead to seek the knowledge behind the headlines. So if you see something on one news media, if you still choose to watch the news, if you see something on a news media from one very, let's just call CNN, right, because they're very biased, and for all intent purposes, we'll just use Fox, although they're not quite as biased anymore, or Newsmax or ONN. So if you see something from one perspective, ask yourself, what if it's true and what if it's not true? And then seek out that exact same headline from another news source and ask the same questions. And find out from those two different news sources, because now you're watching the chess game. And there's different players. And I will tell you that in the back row of the chess game, everybody in the back row on one side does not have the same agenda. So that's where you start getting into some really interesting things. And so that, my friends, is checkers and chess. And it's a way for you to go from being woke, hit over the sledgehammer with this what the hell is happening in this world, it's not as it seems, to being able to wake up. And waking up, for me, being awakened, in my perspective, is really when a person steps off that checkers board, when they're no longer being emotionally, they're not allowing their emotions to override their logic, because logic and emotions are both important. So when you get off of that checkers board, you start getting into that logic and reason part of your mind, where you can all of a sudden, instead of being totally reactionary with your raw emotions, you all of a sudden can look through logic and reason and say, I've heard that before, but I'm not going to get angry. I'm not going to attack somebody on social media. I'm going to find out why they actually said what they said and what they meant by what they said, instead of just attacking them in a mob for what they said. The mob is the checkers game, right? It is two sporting teams against each other, whatever you want to call it. You can walk away from that. You can walk away from the mob, and you can all of a sudden find your mind again. And I hope that some of the videos that we create here are going to help you find your mind so that you can use logic and reason. You'll always have emotions, because it's about love and truth. It's about finding the balance between your emotions and your logic, your heart and your mind. It's finding that balance. But you don't want to live in the emotional world, because it's so high anxiety, and you deserve better than that. So that is the checkers versus chess concept. What do you think?